going to be difficult to find right or wrong answers when it comes to some of these, navigating these nasty legal situations, especially if you know both parties. The most important thing for you to remember is you don't want to make it about you. It's not about, I'm a hero, I'm a revenge person, I'm going to go and solve this problem. Give the survivor agency and make sure that you don't make things worse. That's not to say that it's always the wrong answer to take action on your own, especially if the survivor is a child, right? In that case, you're going to need to, somebody under, depending on how old of a teenager they are, you may want to override their wishes to protect other people, right? But it's something that you have to balance and be careful with, and the best way to navigate that situation is don't make it about you. And this includes if you have a previous assault experience yourself. There may be a tendency to compare assault experiences, your assault experience being worse or less serious. Share your experience with the other survivor, not as a prescriptive way to tell them how they need to recover or how they behave, but as somebody walking in their shoes, saying, I don't know exactly what you're going through. Everyone goes through their own thing, but this is what I go through, and I understand some of it, and I want you to know that you're not alone. And there's some tools I've found that may be able to help you out, and maybe we can go through them together. But I'm here for you. I understand that your situation is different than mine, but I'm here to support your warriorhood and however you recover from this. Something a little more like that, something where you are stepping into the situation with them, but not as somebody who is above them. That's very, very important. And finally, there's going to be so many situations that we haven't covered that you may have questions about. So please put questions down in the comments. Don't rat out somebody's specific situation, but you can ask about things like whatever, I don't know what questions you have, but whatever questions you have about how to better help folks who are, dealing with sexual trauma, and how to support them in their journey. So we're going to do a different talk at some point on how to protect and prevent sexual trauma in people you care about, and that's going to be a very different perspective. That's going to be a very hands-on perspective, and I bring that up because I want you to know that there is a time to act and be assertive, right? At one point in time, there was some guidance from the Air Force that was incredibly bad, that said you should try to submit to the rapist and maybe pee on them to discuss them. It's nonsense. None of that has a strong evidence base, again, because the majority of rapists are power reassurance rapists. The ability to strike back can sometimes dissuade them, make them go in a different direction, because it destroys the fantasy that a lot of times there'll be a dating fantasy or something else that they'll have in that situation. So before an assault occurs, because the victim at that time cannot fight back because of the freeze, because of whatever else is going on with their body, that is a time where you should step in and do something. You see something, you say something. People have talked about being assaulted and other people being nearby and doing nothing because they felt that they deserved it, or they felt that's not my business. Maybe she likes it. In the military, I have encountered situations where somebody was drunk and was it's technically characterized as unwanted sexual contact, not sexual assault in the military, but it's in the same spectrum. But the person was experiencing this, someone else was nearby and saw it, and then went off to accuse them of adultery, rather than helping them out of the situation where they were being, assaulted, given something that they didn't want. Yeah, that sucks. Don't be that person. I'm sorry, it's not a very professional way to talk, but don't be that person. If you're trying to help your friend, watch their drink. Don't let them go off drunk with somebody that they don't know. Yeah, you can think, okay, they're an adult, but that person is not capable of consenting. Don't let someone go home drunk with somebody that they don't know. You don't know what's going to happen to them the next day. it's very, very difficult to ascertain consent in those kind of situations, and I'm not trying to be a prude. I'm trying to, you know, protect. You want to protect other people. So before an assault occurs, like, it's better to be overcautious than to be assaulted. That's when you want to be hands-on and assertive. After an assault occurs, the best thing that you can do for your friend is a lot of times being hands-off and available. You don't want to go and be a hero. You don't want to go running in, guns blazing, with your revenge fantasy, right? You want to be there for them and help them as they are making these decisions, right? And that's where the focus needs to be, because that way you can help them again in that transition from victim to survivor, right, to where they become their own advocate. And that way you are not re-victimizing them and taking away their agency. I hope that makes sense as an overall philosophy for how to take care of folks who are experiencing these things. Always make sure they get medical care within the first 48 hours, and within the first 5 days is when they are able to get a forensic exam before the forensic material degrades. They're going to feel really gross after something happens. Another reason that rapists are not convicted is victims usually will go home immediately and take a shower, and they will wash off all the evidence, because without thinking, you're just trying to get this awful foreignness off of you. You just feel awful and disgusting, especially because depending on what the person might have said to you during the experience. So you know, so consider that, you know, try to inform your friends if they, you know, obviously don't blame someone for taking a shower. You understand why it happens, but if they have underwear, that somebody like me can test, clothes, you can get things from under people's fingernails. So if at all possible, anything that's unwashed from the event, bring that with you to the forensic exam within the first 5 days. Really best to get within the first 48 hours. And that's a very traumatizing and stressful experience, so you've got to really be there for them. And sometimes the sexual assault care provider, or the sexual assault medical forensic examiner, or the sexual assault registered nurse may not always have the best bedside manner. Just because we get into this because we care about people doesn't mean that we don't sometimes have stupid days. And unfortunately, our stupid days could be the worst day of someone else's life. So that's another reason, like, having a friend there to be an advocate for them can make a difference, even if you're just outside the room, right? These are horrible, horrible situations, and even as someone who's doesn't have a relationship with the person assaulted, I can tell you it is incredibly difficult. Every single patient I've had that I took care of within the first 48 hours, I mean, I went away, and afterwards, after taking care and making sure everything was fine, it was very difficult not to break down, right? Because these are horrible things that happen to people. So remembering that as a friend, also take care of your mental health. Don't ever avoid the person because you can't handle don't be a coward, okay? Take care of your mental health so that you can be strong and help them, right? And taking care of your mental health may not mean, because they may become clingy or, you know, these other stereotypical things after the assault, or they may become very isolated. Everyone's reaction is different. Some people, when interviewed, they speak like a robot, like they have no feelings left, and that those women are often not going to get help because the people think they're lying. And other people will speak, you know, will like cry and weep. There was a myth that was long held in law enforcement of a hysteria syndrome as the standard following assault. That's not true. People have different reactions. And so just like they have different reactions, they may have different healing when it relates to you. They might send you a ton of text messages, or they might isolate from you and not talk to you. So you have to balance your response according to that, and you have to be forgiving. You have to understand they're going through something rough, and you have to be strong and patient with them. So how can you develop strength and patience so that you don't avoid them when they're in their deepest mental health hole? Well, you can take care of your own mental health. You can teach yourself self-care for CBT and DBT. I have links for things like that down in the description. If you're watching this as part of a course, you will probably have those links as well. But you know, look them up. There's plenty of videos on self-care online. Take care of yourself, but don't become a coward. People sometimes will use self-care as an excuse to abandon their friend because they can't take it. And a lot of sexual assault victims have felt that isolation. And that makes it very difficult to make that transition into being a survivor because you're re-victimized over and over again. So I mean, that's the main thing you can do, is be there, be available, listen. You don't always have to say something. You don't always have to be right. And if you do mess up, because you probably will, just apologize. Just say, hey, you know, I'm sorry. I think what I said might have come off. I think what I said might have been insensitive. Make sure to take responsibility, not put responsibility on them. I may have said something foolish or out of line. Please help me and correct me if I do. This is new territory for me as well, and I care about you and want to help you feel better as a person, right? Something like that. And so anyway, I hope that all of this information has been helpful. Please send me your questions in the comments, or if you're watching this as part of a course, you can put them in your worksheet and continue to evaluate them. But I hope that this has been helpful. And remember that providing care after the fact, you know, we have all our superhero videos are all about people, you know, taking bad guys down, you know, before something horrible happens. And sometimes the biggest heroism is after something happens, and it's quiet, and it's secret, and it's not explosive. And, you know, sometimes you have to be the stealth guy when it comes to being a hero. So I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I hope you will really consider being open and speaking openly in support of victims, and can often make people more willing to open up for you and ask for help, especially if you talk about you know, resources and things like that, and if your behavior is behavior that like shows you're watching out for other people to not get assaulted, and it's something you're cognizant of. People are often more interested in opening up, whereas nobody wants to open up to somebody who's going to start questioning what really happened, or if they're you know, if they deserved it, right? And if two people open up to you and they have two different sides of the same story, okay, you just listen. As a sexual assault care provider, it has been my job to provide care both for the accused and the victim, right? And it is my job to be kind and impartial and take care of both. I'm not questioning the victim, I'm listening, I'm giving them the resources to report, I'm believing them, I'm finding their information. At the same time, I am finding mental health care for the accuser. I'm making sure that their medical needs are met, and there's that balance of just impartiality. And obviously you may not be a physician, you may not have to worry about that. I have to worry about that because in court, if a forensic exam ever comes up that I have done, the defense attorney will sometimes try to break down the evidence I have in support of the victim by saying, like, I had it out for the other guy, right? Whereas if I can prove that I have been impartial, I have been taking care of both sides, I know how to do these exams, and I am calm and collected medically, which is unfair, right? These are all stereotypical external things that have nothing to do with the truth. But my ability to look unbiased can be a very important turning point in the case for the sexual assault survivor. Obviously that's a ton of responsibility, and that sucks, and that's not fair. They should get care and justice regardless of whether or not their scifi had a bad day. But I bring it up as an example for how it is possible to really, 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 really hate sexual assault and still, you know, be a listening person. And I would still recommend that person, you know, the appropriate resources. You know, I would say for both parties, make sure you seek behavioral health care, make sure you seek medical care, and make sure you seek legal care. So you see how I'm over here, there's more emphasis on what the victim needs, but at the same time, I wasn't there. There's always the truth that I wasn't there. I believe the victim. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know what was going on. I don't know if this person was inebriated and thought that there was consent. Again, another reason to don't have sex inebriated with someone you don't know, because drunk people don't communicate very well, right? So I don't, you know, it's not an excuse. It's never an excuse to assault someone because it's your responsibility to obtain consent. However, again, I wasn't there. I don't know the situation. So I listen. I don't attack. I don't, you know, go off on my revenge schemes. I recommend behavioral health care. And that's what I do. I don't have to be friends with the accuser. Not the accuser, I'm sorry. I don't have to be friends with the suspect. You know, depending on your situation, so many people are so worried about false accusations that victims and survivors usually feel abandoned by their friend group while everyone else supports the suspect. And I know that's not a truth that people like to hear, but the fact is, you know, there was a study in Michigan, 90% of people who reported their assaults did not even get an investigation because the investigating officer didn't think it was worth it, right? So you look at those kind of statistics, false reports, yeah, they can happen, but they are not as common as unreported or ignored reports, right? So that's not your position. Never do that. Never abandon the victim. Be with the survivor. You can be unbiased and not be an a-hole to both sides while, you know, throwing your chips in with the survivor and making sure they're okay, making sure they get the legal help they need, and making sure people are safe from future assaults, right? It is not that hard. All you have to do is listen, be there, and ask them what they would like you to do for them. That's the biggest thing. I am not your friend. I am not your friend who's been assaulted. That person is a unique individual, and they will have their own needs and desires and wishes. And it's up to you to, you know, find out what those are, and try to meet those wherever you are, right? And so I hope that's kind of helpful too, to kind of deal with, like I said, it's very difficult having been in that kind of situation where, like, the best thing I can do for the survivor is to be unbiased and take care of everybody. That's rough, but at the same time, I've also taken care of suspects whose, like, whole life has been turned upside down, right? And they feel miserable. They don't have the same. It's not the same. It's not nearly as traumatic to be accused of something as to have something happen to you, right? The brain chemistry changes, the physical changes, personality changes, all these kinds of things that happen to the victim because of the biological thing that happened to them, right? There's nothing that compares to that. It's awful. But unless you were there, you need to not go, you know, shooting, you know, knocking down people's doors and shooting people up, or whatever it is that you might like to do because you are upset. That's not usually going to be useful. I'm not going to say, you know, if you live somewhere where, I'm not going to say or make judgment on things that people have done. I think it is very unfair, personally, in the justice system that there was a woman who killed her attacker and then got 50 years in jail because he was her husband. And obviously I think that's unfair. I think, you know, we have convicted rapists who get 9 months. That doesn't seem right. But whatever your feelings and whatever my feelings are on the justice system, you want to always do what's best for the survivor. You want to be careful, and you don't want to get so wrapped up in your own glory hero self-image that you're actually doing harm. So I hope that makes sense. I am in no way justifying or saying you need to be friends with an assailant. I am saying that in those situations where you don't know what to do, the best thing to do is take care of the survivor and recommend mental health care for the suspect, and be a listener. That's the best thing, because you can never go wrong. You can never go wrong doing those two things, right? Ever. What you can go wrong with is people feel abandoned, and that's what you can go wrong with, is abandoning people where they have no one to turn to, no one to talk to, right? So that's the most important thing. Don't abandon, don't lecture, don't impose, don't go off and be a crazy cowboy. After an assault is the time to be a quiet, warm, safe place for the other person to come. I hope that's helpful, and I'm sorry if this has been a little bit long, but I think that this video will help some folks out. So go out there and be real heroes.